Welcome everyone to Silicon Flatiron's crash course, which is a different type of crash course than we've done before. How many of you have been to a Silicon Flatiron's crash course before tonight? All right, and first time crash coursers? So most of you don't know the difference then, so that's all good. That this is a little bit different than what we usually do. But this is a night that's about impact that matters, and ultimately, once you find impact that seems to work, how do you scale that, and some of the unique issues around nonprofits through the prism of entrepreneurship. And delighted to have Robert Rich back here. Maybe we should do the same kind of question. How many of you were at a New Tech meetup in this room when Robert was leading the New Tech meetup and building that community? All right, so some of you know what you're in for. Many of you don't. Robert is the master conductor in terms of what he did for this room. So beginning about 2007 and continuing for, until probably about 2-3 years ago, 2016. So 9 or so years, the New Tech meetup became the entry point for many people in the Boulder and Denver community. If you were coming and you wanted to be part of the tech scene, you really wanted to be at the New Tech meetup. And I think we passed the point of statute of limitations. I mean, there were people sitting on the floor in here. There were people out the aisles. We had police coming. I mean, it was a happening on a regular basis. And one of the key drivers of that was Robert just has a really magical touch in terms of how to facilitate interaction. And so I reached out to Robert and said, we got a special crash course coming up. Would you be interested in coming back and doing this? And he said yes. Welcome back.
I'm curious, everybody's really spread out. I wonder, being we've got a little smaller group, if we can ask, if you don't mind, the closer you come, the more community we can get out of this, and also the bigger chance you have to meet somebody else. So if you don't mind, we'll kind of disrupt for a moment and just kind of pull you closer. If you're not comfortable with it, you're welcome to stay in the back, but if you're okay, come get closer. As we chase some people out.
Yeah, looking for the rebels that are going to move further back on this opportunity.
That's nice. Also okay, too. It's not a requirement, but thank you. Thank you for doing that.
All right, so I'm going to say a few things about how tonight's going to work, and then I'm going to invite Robert to talk about some of the work that you guys really started with the nonprofits and the technology community. And then we'll do a meet someone near you, some community events, and then we're going to get going. In terms of the way tonight's going to work, where is Amy? Amy, please welcome Amy, the Executive Director for Silicon Flatirons. Tonight's welcome. One of the things that I am grateful for and very appreciative of is that, if you notice, she's just about at every event about entrepreneurship as well as other things around Silicon Flatirons, and so really terrific to have her here. Then we will move into presentations by each of the nonprofits. Again, the theme tonight is scaling impact, and so the discussion will include, here's some stories about how we found something to work, and within the nonprofit forum, how we scaled impact. Just saw someone point. I'm wondering, all right, I'm all right. It happens in class sometimes. How do you scale impact? It was you. What were you pointing at, by the way? No, behind. And also fair game is, hey, we've got something that works. We're wondering how to make it bigger, but here are some problems that we're running into, and that might be a place where community involvement could be helpful. So we'll go there. We're going to wind up the last 20 or 30 minutes with a panel conversation, interaction with the community. Really excited about how tonight's going to go. Talk a little bit about the history of nonprofit interaction with the tech community through the New Tech meetup.
So when I used to run New Tech, we always had kind of cycles of where things were really busy and things were kind of slow. And so in the slow months, we tried to be creative and come up with ways that we could be helpful with a smaller community. We ended up coming up with an idea that we called kind of the nonprofit night. And what we did is we asked people to come up and present. And then we actually used the entire building and had people that focused in their own discipline. So if you were in marketing, and the nonprofit needed help with marketing, you'd go sit with, which ended up being like 100 people who all wanted to help with marketing. Or if you needed help with coding something, you went and sat in the room with a bunch of people who were really excited on that particular problem, and they helped them code. One of the ones that stands out for me was the Boulder Food Bank. So the food bank did not have a website that allowed people to figure out where they could go get food or where they could donate food. They were actually emailing out spreadsheets to people. So you would have to figure out who to call. You'd have to then get a spreadsheet emailed to you if you could even get an email. And so in one night, we built a website that allowed them to upload all that information and have a functioning website. Another one was, and this guy was amazing in his presentation, it was a text service that his daughter was part of one of the school shootings. And he came up with a nonprofit, I Love You, might have been the name of it, or something like, sorry?
Rachel's Challenge?
It wasn't called Rachel's Challenge. It was like, I think it was like I Love You. I'd have to go back. We recorded these. But he stood up and told the story of his daughter calling him and his wife and saying, I love you. And then he never spoke to her again. And yeah, like our hearts just dropped. And he was like, how do we stop this? What can we do from a technological perspective to make this better, to make this more robust? And we ended up creating a geolocation service for him in that night that allowed anybody, which we now have as part of the school district, to have a text number. And so if your number was part of this and you were part of the geolocation of where your student was and related to school, it would automatically send a text message. And my favorite part of it is the way we used to present it. A lot of the tech community are first-time founders. They don't really have a lot of money. They're trying to do this themselves. And this was a way for them to come give back without actually having to write a check. They could give their time. And so it was a very special night. We did it for about 4 years, I want to say. And I think we really made an impact. So thank you for having me. This one's going to be a little different than tonight. We don't actually get to go code or help with marketing, but we can do that from Q&A in our 5-minute session.
Although some of the presenters might say if you want to, that would be wrong. So we'll see where this goes. To the extent that it works, a real debt to you for setting this in motion. To bring a couple things current, one is that the meetup continues to exist, and Mike Boucher and Susan Kraus are now leading that. If you haven't been, it's the second Thursday of the month across the street at Idea Forge. Easy to recommend. And moreover, in terms of Silicon Flatirons, for those of you who have not been here before, when we're on our game, one of the things that we do are juxtapose different types of communities. And tonight's a perfect example of that, where we've got people from the nonprofit world who are doing really powerful and important work, and individuals from the tech world who are doing also significant work in the community and bringing them together. Some of you may be familiar with one another, but I'm guessing that for most of you this will be two different streams of communities coming together. I personally believe that great startup scenes tend to be accelerated and enhanced by a world-class research university, and so some of what we try to do out of Silicon Flatirons and increasingly across the campus. Paul Jurdy's here, he was doing that at Deming. Sarah Beth Burke is here, she was doing that out of Rio. Increasingly, we try to get a high velocity of interaction going between CEU and the world-class scene that's out our front door. So that's where this fits in. With that, let's talk about some events. Which first question, what do you want to ask them? Community announcements.
Do you guys have any announcements you want to make? It's been a while. Anybody have anything they want to announce? Because it's important that we help promote everything and not just the ones going on here.
I'll kick it off. I'm leading a called Future Bound. It's an innovation ecosystem focused on solving the biggest challenges in child development, bringing all these sectors of ventures and entrepreneurs and healthcare, education, policymakers that care about kids. How do we do better for kids? So we have a summit in November 12th to 15th in Denver, and we'll have a big showcase where 18 amazing ideas, these entrepreneurs that are just crushing it at the forefront of child development will present. But there's lots of other activities. So check out Future Bound. We'd love to see you at the summit.
Awesome. Anybody else? Anything else you guys want to announce? All right, you're going to be quiet tonight. You want to? Is any Silicon Flatirons coming up?
Yeah,
Events coming up?
October 24th, our annual conference is going to be looking at entrepreneurship in rural areas, so rural geography and entrepreneurship. Among others, the executive director of Startup Colorado, Delaney Keating, is going to be here. We've got some really interesting stories coming in from not just across different parts of Colorado, but Nebraska, Wyoming as well. Be a super interesting discussion. The conventional wisdom is that entrepreneurship tilts in favor of startup scenes like that already exist here in Boulder and Denver. But if you look at the economic importance of innovation and entrepreneurship in the information age, if you can't make that work in communities, it's becoming increasingly an existential question for them. And so there's a lot of people who are doing interesting work to support new ideas and businesses in rural areas. And we're going to be focusing on that on October 24th.
For those that are of my age, potentially, and just a little bit younger, I moved here in 2006. How many people were kind of in the tech startup scene here in 2006? Anybody? One? A couple of us? When I moved here, there was no tech scene. Like it had been crushed by the financial issues that happened a few years before that. And so if you think of Boulder where it is today, if you go back to 2006, we were one of those rural communities that like needed to rebuild itself. So it doesn't take that long, but it does take time.
We've got a tradition here also initiated by Robert, although I think you probably stole it from a church. Find someone that you've not met before tonight, introduce yourself, we'll reconvene in 2 minutes and get started. Great to have you here. At least they used to do it at my church.
Did they? That's
Yeah.
really fun. I did read it somewhere as a way to get the group going. I thought that was fun.
The room so fast.
Yeah. Now that your blood's kind of boiling and you're ready to talk, we can introduce people that are coming up.
Yep.
And I'm going to sit down over here.
Good evening, everybody. I was really excited when Brad asked me to do the introduction because before I came to Silicon Flatirons, and I still think I can say I'm new, I'm rapidly nearing the point where I can't say that anymore. I spent 10 years in the nonprofit space, including 6 at an organization called Access Now that supplied digital security advice to activists and journalists and other nonprofits all over the world. And so we definitely had a service that we were trying to scale up and provide much more broadly. And so this is an area near and dear to my heart. And I know people who work in the nonprofit space put their blood, sweat, and tears into the work that they do. And I'm really excited to hear from the groups here tonight. who we have, and I'm going to announce the speakers and the organizations. If you could all just stay put, we're going to call you up in order to give your presentations and then have you sit at the table afterward for the Q&A. And we have Frank Didone from the Nurse Family Partnership, which positively transforms the lives of vulnerable babies, mothers, and families to provide a future where all children are healthy, where families thrive, and communities prosper. Isabel McDevitt from Boulder Bridge House. The Boulder Bridge House provides a safe, supporting community for the homeless and working poor, and is committed to addressing the immediate survival needs and to providing services that lead to stability, healing, and employment. Cliff Gronseth from NYAGI. I believe it's NYAGI. Brad, give me a thumbs up. You got it right. Yes. How are we doing? NYAGI envisions a world where all pregnant women have access to healthcare providers skilled in life-saving ultrasound diagnostics. And finally, we have Bob Omer and Stacy Putka. I probably got that wrong. I apologize if I did. At Defy Colorado, which transforms the lives of people with criminal histories and community members through their collaboration along the entrepreneurial and employment journey. Thank you for all of our speakers for coming here tonight. Thank you to Robert. Thank you to Brad. And I'm really looking forward to it and to talking to all of you afterward. Thanks.
It's on here. Frank, you ready? Let's do it. You could use that one too.
I'm hearing about technology. I'm hearing about making a community a better place and serving families. I'm in the right place. This is right where I wanted to be. So I'm going to talk to you about trying to scale a nonprofit. We're a national nonprofit. For the next 15 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about stress management of being a CEO. Nah, that's not really what's going to happen. So here we go. So you already heard there's our mission and our vision, right? Positively transform the lives of vulnerable moms, babies, and families. And our vision is to a future where all children are healthy, families thrive, communities prosper, and the cycles of poverty are broken. Sounds big, sounds lofty, because it is. And is it hard work? You bet it is. But this is the work that we do every day. And why it's important to talk about mission and vision, because we're talking about scaling, right? We're going to talk about scaling an organization. We're going to talk about growth. We're talking about the challenges that go along with those things. There's going to be tough times. And there's going to be difficult times. And we're trying to grow. You got to develop a culture internally within your organization that's going to allow you to be able to do that. This is your North Star. This is what you bring everybody back to in those difficult times. And in the good times as well, we reinforce this. I used to work for a little burrito company called Chipotle. And we went from a very, very small company when I started with them, and we grew very large, went international, did amazing scaling work there as well in growth, for profit. We always came back to these. This is what we talked about. That was the engine that drove the organization. The next piece of it is you've got to ensure you have some form of a strategic plan. You have to have a plan moving forward, right? You can't just go out and start trying to change the world without having some kind of plan in place. And I know sometimes people are like, well, really, Frank, you know what? That makes sense. I mean, everybody's going to have a plan of some sort. But when you're in it and you're doing the work, this is what everything ties back to. So here are the goals from our strategic plan, right? We have our program growth, our operational efficiency, we focus on our outcomes, our sustainability, and you notice foundationally is the engagement piece, right? That's the engagement of our team, our workers, the people that are involved, our volunteers, our staff in the field, our nurses, right? You want to keep them engaged. You want to have that dialogue. You want them to be focused on that mission and vision. They need to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, because that other work up top is really hard. And when you're trying to grow and you're trying to scale, the first thing that goes out the window are those outcomes, right? You can grow, but if you start losing those outcomes, you start losing that impact. So it's this constant balancing act of trying to keep that going. Program growth, sustainability go hand in hand, right? You can grow and grow and grow, but if you can't sustain what you have, you start to lose funding. You start to lose traction. and you start to spin your wheels, and you really don't get anywhere. You feel like you're getting somewhere, but you're not. And at the end of the day, what happens is families aren't getting served. And that's the unfortunate piece of it. So it's really important to make sure you're focused, you've got your goals in place, and you've got a plan for the team, right? So now you ask, well, that's great and all, but what is it that you guys do? So there was a guy, Dr. David Olds. He's our founder. Over 40 years ago, he believed that there was an intervention. If you were able to work with children young enough, you could change their life course. Children born into poverty, children born into difficult circumstances, parents that are incarcerated, living with their grandparents, substance abuse in the home. He felt like if I could get to them when they're in the preschool age, we can make a change. What he realized once he started to do that work, it was already too late. He needed to go younger, sooner. The scars of toxic stress and the challenges that those children have experienced were just too deep to unravel. So the idea was, and I'm gonna read this quote if you guys haven't already read it yourselves, but there's a magic window during pregnancy, a time when the desire to be a good mother and raise a healthy family, a happy child, creates motivation to overcome incredible obstacles, including poverty, instability, or abuse, with the help of a well-trained nurse. This is the theory he came up with, and this is what he executed against, and was able to then go on and create a program. So what does that program look like? What we do is we pair a nurse with a mom living in difficult circumstances that's 28 weeks pregnant. And we work with that mom, we meet with that mom on a regular basis, weekly, every other week, to ensure that she delivers a healthy baby. And we focus on those birth outcomes to ensure that the child is born with the best possible opportunity. And you think about it, it's not just for the child to be born healthy, but think about the challenges of a mother already living in difficult circumstances to also then have to go and try and raise a child that was developmentally behind or having health issues. And also think about this from a societal savings for what you're putting into the program. A healthy child being born, $5,000 roughly. A child that spends 5 nights in a NICU, $60,000, right? These families are living in poverty. They're living on Medicaid primarily is going to be their source of insurance, taxpayer dollars, right? So that $5.70 return that we see, right? There's been studies done. For every dollar invested in nurse-family partnership, there's a $5.70 return. That's the type of thing that it comes from. So that sounds great, Frank, but how do we know it works? Well, guess what? We did 3 randomized control trials. So there was one done in Elmira, was the original one of 400 families, another one done in Memphis, and then one done in Denver, Colorado in 1984. All of them showed overwhelming positive outcomes for these families in the areas of birth outcomes, child development outcomes, and then economic mobility or economic self-sufficiency for that family, right? Is this interesting? Okay. So that's the randomized control trials that showed this program actually does work. And that's an important component of it. So kind of what does this kind of look like on the ground, right? Let me give you an example. I was in somewhere in East LA. It was the middle of the summer. It was about 90, 95 degrees, and I'm with one of our nurses. And we went up to go visit one of our moms who just had a baby that was 2 months old. And this nurse already had visited with that family several times. She's like, there's a few things I want you to see here, and there's one thing I really want to point out to you. Let's go in. So we start going up. So it was a family of 7, along with the baby, that lived in an attic apartment above the shop where they created juices and other products and stuff for the community. We got up there. All the way up, there's only one way to leave the building, and it's a stairwell that's filled with boxes. And she points out, fire hazard. I've been trying to get them to get this cleaned up. We go in, we walk into the apartment. Now it's 100 degrees. The temperatures are soaring. We're sitting there, we're sweating, and she's spending her time with the mom and the baby. And here's this new mom. She's got a 2-month-old in her arms. My baby's great. How's she doing? Doing wonderful. The baby's perfect. You know, what do you do to keep the baby cool when you're getting hot? I take him, put him in the bath. All these lessons that she was teaching them. And then went in and did an assessment of the baby and looked at the baby and did a couple of things and said to me, I want you to look at this. And she took a baby rattle and was shaking it, and the baby was looking straight ahead. She's like, I think the child has some kind of hearing impairment. Asked the mom, you ever had any kind of challenges with your hearing? She's like, oh yeah, I wore hearing aids from the time I was very young until I was 13 years old. And this mom was a little bit developmentally challenged because of that delay that happened for her. The nurse sent the mom to a screening for the child, determined did have hearing impairment, and was able to get the type of help that they needed to allow that child to develop on time so they would be ready for school. That's the type of work that they're doing on the ground every day. I mentioned we were in East LA. We weren't far from Skid Row. The areas that we go into, these nurses go into, are not the most glamorous neighborhoods. They're challenging, they're not safe, but they get up every day and they do this hard work. Here are some of the outcomes from the RCT. Reduction in child abuse and neglect, 67% reduction in behavioral and intellectual problems to children age 6. I just gave you a great example there. Reduction in arrests among children, and 72% lower convictions of mothers. I mean, these are significant outcomes to have impact within a community. So, an increased employment by mothers. One of the things that our nurses also do is they spend time working with the moms to say, have you finished school? Have you gone back to work? I was in Pennsylvania and I met with one of our moms. Her name's Shannon Maloney. She went through our program when she was homeless, couch surfing on some friends' couches. She had left her home because she'd never had any support there. She had both parents dealing with substance abuse issues. I could go on and on. She just finished high school, didn't know what else was there to do. She delivered her baby, she was working, and her nurse convinced her that she could go back to school. She said, you know what, school's not for people like me. And over a short period of time, because our nurse developed a relationship with her, she was able to convince her she should go back to school. I was talking to her child that she had at the time when she was in the program was now 15 years old. She had 3 other children. She was married, and she was the assistant district attorney in Pennsylvania in one of the local counties fighting for children's rights. That, to me, is the idea behind nurse-family partnership and how we're changing the face of our communities that are challenged. So that said, growth, because this is about scaling, right? You got to understand what it is we're trying to scale before I can go into the detail on how we're going to do it. So here we go. So growth over time, 1996, the program began to scale until 2003 out of the University of CU in Denver. Reached 13,000 families served annually in 2003 and realized that they could not continue to replicate and grow and maintain the outcomes out of the university, so they created the National Service Office in 2014. The National Service Office provides implementation wraparound services for our program across the country. Okay, so what we do is marketing and outreach, right? How do we go find those mothers? How do we create advocacy in communities? How do we build those advocates out in the local environment that get them excited about it, so when there's challenging times, they're there and they're on our side. Technology, right? This is an evidence-based program. So the RCTs, we still track the evidence on a regular basis to ensure that we're getting the outcomes that are being paid for. So we provide technology services. This year we went into recruiting services for workforce development. We talked about sustainability. We can go out and find funding to get more nurses and bring them into our program, but if you don't fill those positions, over time, those dollars go away. We have a government affairs arm as well that goes out looking for opportunities. There's a federal bucket of money called McV, which is the Maternal Infant Early Childhood Home Visiting Program, which we get about 1/3 of that. So we do a lot of work in DC to ensure those dollars are there. How do we advocate to increase those dollars? And then we do it at the state level as well. There's general funds. 2 minutes. Okay, so I got to get moving. I thought I had a little bit more. My apologies. So let's get to the issues. So 50,000 families served annually. So now here we are, vision to scale plan. So a couple of years ago, 2016, we went out, we raised some money from philanthropy to say, can we grow to 100,000 families from the 50,000 families we were at? So we raised this capital, focused on operational efficiency, and how do we scale out? So one of the ideas was pay for success. Pay for success, we were able to bring in $17 million in private investors to go ahead and serve 3,200 families. This is also an RCT, and it's being tracked by JPAL. You guys may have heard of JPAL, one of the people that just won the Nobel Prize for Economics is part of JPAL, and they're studying our program and the work that we're doing. Very challenging. How do you make it sustainable when you bring that kind of money in from private philanthropy? Medicaid. So right now we've been doing very well. Medicaid in South Carolina is excited about what we're doing. So now they're saying, okay, we're looking at taking the Medicaid reimbursement that we're giving you, doubling that to cover our program. That's one way to grow. Another one is we were fortunate enough to raise $12.5 million, distribute that out to partners that are functioning really well, but it was a 1-to-2 match. So right there, you've got some leverage on your dollars, and then at the end of 3 years, our dollars go away, and part of that grant that we gave them was to ensure that they were able to find funding as well to fill that third gap, the third amount of dollars in 3 years. So think about the leverage of the amount of those $12.5 million we invested is going to go up exponentially over time. We've been able to we were able to get 80 new nurses. At this time, as the nurses are ramping up, we're at about 1,100 new families with this approach. By the time it's done over the course of a few years, we're talking about thousands and thousands of families that'll be served. So that's one way. We're fortunate enough to have that funding. I'm watching the guy looking at his clock there. Operational efficiency is actually my last slide. See, I kind of picked up the pace. So operational efficiencies, right? Critical piece. I talked about sustainability. Sustainability is critically important, like I said earlier, because if you're not utilizing your dollars you have, the state comes in and says, we're going to use this for roads and bridges and other programs, and they take those dollars back. So we have to, from a competitive standpoint, because there's other programs out there, we have to be most effective with the dollars that we have. So one of the things we did was we invested in Indiana last year, specifically, to say, okay, we're going to go in and we're going to look at your operation. You're bringing in 22 new nurses. We're going to make sure that they ramp up at a quick pace. We're going to make sure you find the right kind of nurses. We're going to look at your operation process. We're going to streamline and figure out how we can make you guys function much better. State of Ohio, very similar to Indiana, 22 new nurses. That was their growth rate in 2018. California, Washington, and New York, all very large implementations, added a significant amount of nurses. This is tremendous growth in all those communities. It's fabulous. Indiana, the work that we focused on, their operation in finding efficiencies and streamlining, I think that speaks for itself. That's how you sustain an organization. That's how you sustain scale. All right, so we'll go to, and then here's our growth estimate today. In the last 2.5 years, we've grown by 10,000 families more annually. And we're serving over 280,000. We've served over 280,000 families. And by the end of 2023, we hope to be serving over 100,000 families. Awesome. All right. Absolutely. Thank you for having us here.
But if somebody else wants to go first, I'm happy to call on them as well. All right, I get to take the first question.
Go for it.
I don't know the true size. I think will this work, this microphone? Or I can talk really loud. Have you been since the beginning, or did you come in later on?
I came about 3 years ago.
3 years ago? I guess the first question I would have, a lot of the majority of the nonprofits that I've worked with, they all have great mission and vision statements.
Absolutely.
Right? They tug at your heartstrings.
No doubt
How
about
do you
it.
differentiate them? Because you talk about growth and scale. Like the example, the one I used was I Love You Man was actually the name of the nonprofit, right? And so great mission. How do they sustain? How do they grow? right? It's not just the mission and vision. Is there any secret that you saw in there that helps a nonprofit craft a mission and vision that helps them raise money, not just make people aware?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things we have a pretty clear talking points with regards to our 3 randomized controls, right? We're an evidence-based program, so we can walk in there. We don't need to explain to a legislator or a funder, hey, this program works and this is why. The data tells that story, right? If they have a challenge in their community, whether it's infant mortality or maternal mortality, healthy birth weights for their children, they know that there's evidence that our program works. So you take that with the passion, like you said, around the vision and the mission of what we have, and then you couple it with that type of evidence and you can back it up, that tells a pretty good story.
So storytelling with data on top of the mission,
That's right.
in theory, makes it better. Cool. Questions? I can keep going. So let's go here first.
Yeah, thank you. I work with a lot of technology in nonprofit sector, and there's sometimes a cultural divide. Sometimes it's just a skills divide. However, I can't blame the nonprofit world when they don't have the budgets for training and so forth. How do you get nonprofits to embrace culture? Because, you know, what Robert was saying earlier about trying to get a nonprofit to move from spreadsheets to a CRM or to whatever, can be a challenge, I think. I think your background at Chipotle being you were CIO or CTO, you could understand what I'm saying is that, and you don't want to come off as saying, oh, you people just don't know better, because they're usually wearing 5 different hats, right?
Yep.
So how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, technology specifically is an enabler of the business, right? So a good technology organization is going to understand what the business needs are very quickly. I think that's how I went from a CIO to a CEO, is because I can absorb business lines. One of the things, as you know, people in technology get excited about building things and creating things. It's a matter of making sure that you have leadership in technology that can actually communicate, right? So that they can enable the business and they're not off going building what they think everybody wants, but rather what the organization needs, but also what metrics are you going to move with that technology enhancement? That's something that we always try and come back to. We don't just build it for the sake of building it and hope people are going to come. We just launched our first app called Gold Mama that works directly with our moms. We surveyed our moms, we surveyed nurses. What exactly do you guys want? We framed it, we built it exactly the way they wanted, and now we've rolled it out, we're testing it, and now we're going to monitor it going forward. So, and it doesn't hurt to have an ex-CIO in the CEO seat to get people excited about technology.
That's awesome. Thank you. Did you have a question as well? Yeah, please.
Thanks, Frank. It seems like your model, if I understand it correctly, depends on the nurse and the one-to-one relationship between the nurse and the family.
That's exactly right.
And so, given that there's a shortage of nurses nationwide, what are the challenges in scaling if, in order to grow, you need more nurses to do that?
Yeah, well, we implemented a public health departments. So a lot of the nurses that we have are not there going, I'm going to go and try and make $150,000 a year and focused on that piece of it, right? We get a lot of our nurses that came up through challenges like this, that want to give back to the community because they've been part of it. So, you're right. The biggest challenge is going into these rural communities. How do you get them there? I mentioned earlier that we created a recruiting function internally where because the public health department is not savvy when it comes to recruiting, workforce recruiting. We are. This is what we do. We know how to speak to our nurses. We know what messaging works. So we go out, and then we also provide relocation bonuses and then sign-on bonuses to get them to move into these roles. It's been very effective. But as far as the nurse shortage goes, we're competing just as well as anybody else. It is a little bit challenging if they're looking at the salary ranges, but a lot of times our nurses are coming out of a burn unit that they've been in for years, or emergency room, or neonatal, those types of things, and they're kind of like, you know what? I want to stay with that family, I want to see this change, and I want to see it go on for years, not just see them passing through. So it's a special kind of nurse, and there are plenty of them out there that we find. So that's a great question, though.
Yeah.
Just a follow-up question relative to taking the resources, your budgets, and making sure those dollars are being put down to the caregivers versus the administrative costs, and how do you balance those kind of things, and what do you do to, watch that, or what metrics do you use there?
You got to run lean and mean. That's what we do. I mean, when we talk about developing a strong culture, and I got a couple of our people right here that could tell you for sure, that's what you have to do. When the times are good and cash is flush, you still need to be diligent about the dollars that you're spending. We look at today, prior to our scale plan, when we got an influx of dollars and capital to work with, our cost for our national service office per family was about $450, $60. You add inflation into that, I mean, it goes up even more. At the end of our program right now, we're seeing it go down. We're estimating our cost per family is going to be below $400, probably about $392 per family. So you're constantly looking at that. Where do you find economies of scale? Where do you find efficiencies? So that's something you're spot on about.
So we have time for one more question. Who wants it? Yeah, right in the middle. You're good.
Outcome numbers are impressive. I wonder, can you talk a little bit about what the discrepancy is, or sort of the gap between what the problem is that you're trying to solve and your impact? And then specifically, what would you need to be able to close that gap? Like, how far are you from it, and what would it take?
I'm not sure I'm following it.
Yeah, so how many mothers could benefit from your services relative to the number that you're serving?
There's about 380,000 first-time moms giving birth and living in poverty every year. So we feel like if we can hit about 100,000, we think that's a significant amount of scale for us. But we're also always looking at, too, I mean, these families are embedded in a community, right? What is that community saying? How does that community experience opportunities that are out there? Child goes to school, and all they hear about is who's graduating and who's going on to college versus who's dropping out and whose family members are going to jail. It's two different environments. So we're trying to figure out also, how do we have a bigger impact just outside of first-time moms in those communities? But we feel like, you know, more than 25% is pretty significant. Right here in Colorado, our program's been around for a while, 40% penetration rate, which is pretty unheard of. It's phenomenal. Did I answer your question? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Isabel? Did that give you guys enough QA time? Did you want a little more time, or was that appropriate amount of kind of back and forth? Yes?
I'm going to ask a bunch of questions.
Cool. I'll take that as a thumbs up. All right, I'm going to listen in.
All right, thank you. And that's a tough act to follow. So thanks for teeing it up. I'm Isabel McDevitt, and I'm the CEO of Bridge House, and we're a local nonprofit here in Boulder. And I'm going to talk tonight about the issue of homelessness and our innovative model that is all about addressing what we all know is a very difficult, challenging problem that is often a symptom of many other things gone wrong in our community. And for the people experiencing homelessness, it's a circumstance, and it doesn't need to be a lifelong situation. And we truly believe that we can end homelessness one person at a time. So at Bridge House, we have a range of programs. In Boulder, we've been here for over 20 years, and we've provided basic needs and day shelter and meals. And as you know, issues of homelessness are not yet solved. So about 7 years ago, we decided to take a different tact, and we launched a program called Ready to Work. And Ready to Work is a very targeted approach that focuses on homelessness from a perspective of how do we intervene before people become chronically homeless. As you might know, in the news right now, there's many, many challenges going on across the country. And the two themes that you hear about are crises around camping and street homelessness, and who are all these people and what are they doing on our streets? And this is just a public health crisis. This is a crisis at many, many levels. And then you hear about the high cost of housing and how our single strategy as a nation through HUD has been to build housing for the most chronically homeless. Great policy, but only for about 25% of people experiencing homelessness. So what about the other 75%? And so our Ready to Work model, as you can see, we are very bold in our approach. We are on a mission. But our Ready to Work model focuses on the middle third. So there's about 25% to 30% of folks who are chronically homeless who really do need this approach of apartment, supportive services, get them off the street, disability benefits for the rest of their life, or at least for a long period of time. And then there's about another third of folks who are going to self-resolve. They have family connections, they're able to utilize short-term services and resolve. We focus on the folks in the middle. And these are folks who will become chronically homeless if we don't intervene, but they also have the capacity and the desire to get back to work and the capacity to be independent, but they need a boost. And so that's where Ready to Work comes in. And when we're talking about numbers, when we focus on Metro Denver, at any given time, there's about 4,300 adults experiencing homelessness in our community. So that is our target. The 40% of folks who are Ready to Work is really a solution. As I said, we've been in Boulder for many years, and we launched our Ready to Work program as a pilot in 2012. We now have 2 locations across Metro Denver, here in Boulder and also in Aurora. And at any given time, we're putting 94 people to work each day. We're providing them with housing and supportive services. We talk about our program as a 3-legged stool. One of the things that we have found to be most successful is the idea of bringing together the holistic approach: work, housing, and support. Our employment is very important. When we talk about sustainability, social enterprise is our key. We run 2 businesses, a landscaping business as well as a food service operation. Both of our businesses provide 29 hours a week of work. We pay over minimum wage. We offer not only a chance to build a resume, but a chance to get back in the community and do something positive and to integrate. We also provide an opportunity for folks to hire our businesses, whether it's our landscaping business or our catering, and actually get a different opinion of folks experiencing homelessness. But most importantly, we're able through our businesses to earn about 50% of our operating budget and cover all of the work expenses for our program. We also have housing. Our approach is innovative. Again, we're working with people who are not qualifying for housing vouchers. They are not going to get a HUD-funded unit. And most of those units that are our typical strategy to address homelessness can cost over $450,000 just for one unit to develop in the Metro Denver area. Our approach is unique. We convert commercial spaces into dormitories. The dormitory style is important. It's a lot cheaper. It's about 85,000 in capital costs versus over 400,000. But we also are creating community. And community is really, really important for folks to transition back into mainstream employment and housing. And lastly, support. Standalone, to be perfectly honest, you can get case management anywhere. You can get case manager through behavioral health organizations. You can get case management, from walk-up shelters. But what's unique about ours is it's coupled with the employment and housing, and we are really focused on pulling down those barriers so people can be successful. So to graduate from our program, you need to have a full-time job, independent housing, and be able to sustain it. Our program is a year long. It costs about $30,000 a year per person. $15,000 of that is in the wage that we are paying folks and earned through our social enterprise. The balance is about the cost of an annual cost of sheltering. But even more so, it costs about $45,000 a year to do nothing annually for every adult experiencing homelessness. It costs a heck of a lot more for someone who's chronically homeless and in shelters and jail and so forth. So we've got something good. We've got a program that works. We've already gone from a pilot in Boulder with 5 people to a facility with 44 people in Boulder. And just 3 years ago, we were asked to replicate in Metro Denver. We found Aurora, and we went through the process of a true replication. The big kahuna. We raised all the money, we found the building, we developed the building, all under our umbrella. And we've had a lot of lessons learned. And I would say as this relates to scaling, my notes to you are this. Ready to Work could be in every city in this country. Every city in this country is struggling around homelessness. And many are focused on those two other populations, crisis shelter and permanent supportive housing. We need solutions that work in between. But the challenge is, how do you scale? And for us, we have definitely gone down the path of a true replication, which is awesome, and a lot of lessons learned. And what's good about that is we can focus on what's most important about what we do, which is our culture. We can focus on providing that holistic experience to control the environment. There are a lot of shelters out there that want to have a cafe or want to have this or have that. But what we have found is things like day labor just don't work. If you don't have a safe place for someone to live that's going to be a community of support, you can do job training all day long. And so we have decided that our model needs to be that three-legged stool. But what we've sacrificed on the flip side is that we're not out there providing technical assistance in every city across this country. So right now, we are at a pivotal moment. Do we go wide? Do we go deep? If we do want to just replicate, we know that we will not have the scale that we could, but the impact that we'll have, which is a 75% graduation rate for the folks that we serve, is significant. The ripple effect into their own lives is significant. So we're really focused right now on learning from our replication in Aurora, creating a blueprint for what we do, talking about the must-haves versus where there's opportunity for different community input and different nuances. But I can tell you this model works, and it works because we believe in people, and we are not taking a traditional approach towards addressing homelessness, and that is unique. And we do not want to lose that fire. So I think, one of the things we'll be doing over the next couple years is really figuring out just how big we can go without losing that character. So thank you, and I'd love your thoughts.
Personally, I'm getting inspired already. Questions, or should I take the first one? I'll take the first one, so I won't ask going forward. Do you want to scale?
That's a great question. Yes, because we want to change more lives.
But I heard a but.
But not at the cost of sacrificing the outcomes. I mean, one of the benefits of what we do is that we're very independent, we're very entrepreneurial, we run these businesses, they function like real businesses. We have this cool approach of combining the housing and, really high standards around the housing. But the downside is that there's it's not funded by Medicaid. There's no government funding stream that's like, oh yeah, we'll just give you more vouchers if you do more. So that's a trade-off. So we want to have impact, but we don't want to dilute ourselves. So the figure out is how to, thread that needle.
I can keep going. Let's go to the back, and then we'll come over here. All right, Frank.
Hey, so I was just wondering if you're lobbying for government funding on either the state or the federal level, and if not, what the barriers are for you to do that.
So I think one of the challenges is we've got to create almost a new category around addressing homelessness. I mean, transitional housing has like a really bad name in the world of housing, because traditional transitional housing was you house someone for 2 years and then it's like, see you later. But our approach is, we're giving people tools to then be able to sustain their own housing. So there's a lot of kind of undoing in the government world to try to explain just what we're doing. But the positive is I think a lot of us now have a different idea of what housing can look like. I mean, co-ops are the rage, right? Young people here. So I think we can start to tell a different story, but to be honest, we also don't have the resources. Like we don't have like a government arm to start lobbying or those kinds of things, or staff that can really get out there in the same way. So I think, if we had more infrastructure, that's an important next step.
Frank?
Yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
So the question was, who do we network with across the country of groups that do similar work to what we're doing? And I think, again, what's great, but also a challenge, is that we don't fall into any one category. So I've got contemporaries of social enterprise nonprofits that are, creating products and services to employ people, but they don't provide housing. And then there's housing providers who are doing good work, and then, others. And then also just great organizations that, have tackled some of these issues. And it doesn't matter whether it's early childhood education or homelessness, we're all struggling with the same issues. So there are networks out there. I think for us, we work with people from all different circumstances. We're working around reentry, we're working around domestic violence, but I think as a unifying group, we've really targeted people experiencing homelessness, and our mission is to solve homelessness through this approach. So more and more, I think we're getting more dialed in that truly the customer for us are the municipalities that are struggling with this issue, and I think that's giving us some more clarity about, who we need to approach and how.
Yeah, way over here. Can we get a mic?
So I think that the program you put together with the work program is phenomenal, and I was just wondering how the individuals who are going to use these services, how they become aware of them, like what type of marketing are you doing, and are you actually lobbying or discussing these with the cities because it's going to help them so much that they could potentially do some of that work for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, as you might imagine, for people experiencing homelessness, there's a great word of mouth network, in fact, and social media, and people are connected to each other. In each community that we're in, we also work with local service providers and shelters. So here in Boulder, we do operate the severe weather shelter and a program called Path to Home, which is a navigation shelter. So we are seeing folks right off the street. And, one thing that communities also need to do is take a data-driven approach to understanding who's experiencing homelessness in their communities. So we've been able to do that with the general homeless population and really trying to target folks, who are saying, I'm not qualifying for this, but yet I'm really struggling here, and steer them in the right direction. Same thing in Aurora. We don't have any basic needs programming in Aurora, but we've partnered with the outreach teams and the shelters there to make sure that the model is known about.
We have time for one more question. I'm going to go to somebody that hasn't asked, if you don't mind. Do you want to go? Yeah, thank you.
So I've done some research about your company, and it's awesome, super awesome. What other industries would you consider providing jobs for these homeless people? I know you have the landscaping and culinary stuff, but how did you choose those two? And would you consider expanding to more transportation or parking lot services, anything like that? Yeah.
No, that's such a great question. And as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about your reaction to me is we're really clear that we're creating jobs as the first job for someone that's coming off the street. And we're only going to create jobs that people can use as a stepping stone to the next job. So we're not trying to just, there's some nonprofits out there that a lot of reentry nonprofits and others that you might have heard about in other cities like Delancey Street that literally keep creating bigger and bigger businesses because they want to employ everyone for the rest of their life, which is a model, which is great. But we want to give people that first job so they can then transition and work for you or somebody else. So the two industries that we've picked here really relate to, on the municipal level, we're doing a ton of work for the city of Boulder and the city of Aurora where they can't hire people right now. So it's good work, and it's creating all of this community benefit, very visible, but it's also really accessible for people, and we have people who are actually a nurse. You would like this guy, actually. He came to us, registered nurse, he'd lost his license, became homeless, really long story. Ended up in our program working on open space, building trails, and then we were, through the program, helped him get his license reinstated, and now he's back working at an assisted living facility, back in his career, but he needed the support and the stepping stone from us. So I could go on forever here, but I think we pick these businesses because they're really good first jobs. With our kitchen, we have many more opportunities to expand and get bigger, but we're really not looking to create, you know, a lot of businesses, you know, that are going to go beyond that, because again, we really want to integrate people back into the mainstream. Thank you.
I have Defy Colorado is next. Stacy and Bob, thank you. There you go. And we only had 4. No, just kidding.
Yeah. I have a video. It'll just, if I click play, it'll play. Okay. Great. Hi. It's different down here than up there. I'm Stacy Putka. I'm the program director for Defy Colorado. Our executive director, Bob, is over here. You'll hear from him in a couple minutes on the panel. And our program manager, Izzy, is also in the back as well. So we're a local Colorado nonprofit that has been in Colorado since November of 2017. Am I not on? Oh. Hang on, technical difficulties. It's just my day. So I know you guys heard the intro in the beginning. Guesses where that picture's taken? Come on. Jerry knows. Prison. So we aim to solve a very, very big problem in our country. Nationally, 2.3 million people are incarcerated in the United States. 20,000 of them are incarcerated in Colorado. 98% of those people will be released back into our communities, but 1 of every 2 of those will go back to prison within 3 years of being released. So it's a really big problem, and we've identified that a big piece of that problem is lack of employment. In fact, just having a criminal history reduces employer callbacks by 50%. And the unemployment rate of people with criminal histories is 27%, which is worse than any other population at any time in our country. It also costs $39,000 on average annually to incarcerate 1 individual in the Colorado Department of Corrections. So it's expensive, and whatever we're doing while they're there isn't working, since 1 of every 2 people go back. So we aim to solve the problem in a very entrepreneurial way. So I'm going to show you guys a quick video clip so you can get an idea of that, and then I'll keep telling you about it. Maybe.
Try the space bar. Nope.
It's okay. It's really just a bunch of cheering and excitement. Oh, just have the magic touch.
Colorado should be the worst place to commit a violent crime, but the best place to get a second chance. I think what Defy does, it defies the odds. It defies the traditional way of looking at rehabilitation, and kind of creates its own energy, its own hurricane of possibility.
My goodness, this is a happy day. We're showing that we can become more than our past.
No, the space bar's not working. Oh, boy. Just stay here with me. Thank you. So what we do is we run a really unique program model. We start working with people while they're still incarcerated to help prepare them to come back out into our communities. And we use entrepreneurship as the tool for transformation and change that they're lacking in order to help them find and maintain employment, but then also to maybe start and run their own small business so that they can employ more people with criminal histories and not have to worry about their criminal history holding them back anymore. So the program that we run inside is 8 months long, and it's comprised of a lot of different components. We have weekly in-class sessions that are facilitated by Izzy every single week, and we abbreviate it with 3 big milestone events. A kickoff event to get everyone into it, to teach them about our culture and about what the program has to offer. A business coaching day at the midpoint where they present resumes and cover letters. You can think of it kind of like a job fair. And then a business pitch competition and a graduation at the very end. So we actually have one coming up next week where they will all pitch a for-profit business in 3 minutes in a Shark Tank style business pitch competition to different community members that we bring in. And then in the second half of the day, we have a formal graduation ceremony with the caps and gowns, and they get to bring in their family members to watch them graduate and to watch them do something really good while they're still inside. We then continue to support them when they're released, and we do that in 3 different ways. One is a program called Pathways to Reentry. So we help break down barriers to reentry. We help people find housing, help them find basic health care, address if they have any mental health or substance use needs, and get them connected with the proper providers. And then we also help with employment right out of the gate, that any job, just helping them get a job so that they can get employment as soon as they get out. But then we continue to work with them to help them get a better job, and then continue to work with them to help them stay in a career if that's the path that they want to go. And if they want to move down the entrepreneurial path using the business plan that they created while they were inside, we provide tools and resources to help them do that as well. And the common thread and theme through all of this is the curriculum we do is great, and us facilitating it is great, but we've taken in over 600 volunteers to help bring this program to life, to help teach the concepts and give feedback on a variety of different business ideas and build a community that believes in redemption. And we find that that is the thing that causes the most transformation and change, because this group of people that was told, no one cares about you, no one believes in you, we're going to put you in prison 4 hours away from any major city, for them to learn that people care about them and are invested in their success, we found has drastically improved their sense of self-esteem, and then their ability to find and maintain employment and stability once they're out in the community, and reduce their chances of going back to prison. So as I mentioned, that community approach is really big for us, and we've done that in a variety of ways through meeting individuals who want to come in and volunteer and mentor, but also having informal partnerships with different organizations. So being in Boulder, I'm sure you guys have heard of Techstars and Google. We work with Rocky Mountain Microfinance that provides microfinancing to individual business owners that have some barriers to employment. And we also partner with Colorado State University, sorry to say that on CU grounds, but CSU provides our certificate to everyone who graduates from our program through their Institute for Entrepreneurship. So we've had some really big successes in the past 2 years. As I said, we've only been operating in Colorado since 2017. By the end of this year, we will have served over 200 individuals that are currently incarcerated. We have expanded from 2 prisons to 3 prisons. So we're in Colorado State Penitentiary, which is in Canyon City. Raise hands if you know where that is. Pretty good. It's just outside of Colorado Springs. We're also in Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility, which is in Ordway, Colorado. We got 1 hand back there. 2. That's about 45 minutes east of Pueblo, so it's pretty far away. And also La Vista Women's Correctional Facility we were able to scale into this year, which is a women's facility in Pueblo. Fun fact, we have 22 male prisons in the state of Colorado and only 2 female prisons in the state of Colorado. And we've had over 200 family members join for graduation ceremonies to watch their loved one complete this big accomplishment, pitch their business, walk in a cap and gown. We've also been on the front end of innovation with this. There's not a lot of program models that operate within prisons. And we were able to develop a really high-touch model. So there are a lot of programs that run inside correctional facilities, and most of them work on a correspondence basis. So providing content, curriculum, educational materials inside the facilities, and then collecting it back out and checking it, providing feedback, whatever that is. Our high-touch model of having Defy staff there to facilitate the class every week is actually something that we decided to do once we launched the program. When we first launched it and we were looking through the syllabus and reading all the different topic areas that we were covering, it seemed like a lot to tackle. And previously, when the same curriculum was used in other prisons, 50% of people who started the program would drop out of the program. And we thought, that's just not going to cut it. It's the same as the recidivism rate, right? So we developed this high-touch model where we have staff and mentors in the weekly class sessions explaining concepts, walking with people on this journey, and we have a 2% dropout rate. So that has been something that we're really proud of, and we're always looking at our inputs and our data to figure out how we can pivot or change the program. Since our whole team is in this room right now, we're very nimble and quick to change, and so we have the ability to do that, which you can probably relate to on like a startup level. We've also been able to develop a lot of advocacy in the community, speaking at events like this, talking with corporate partners about fair chance hiring has been a huge part of what we've started to take on through this organization in the past year. And we actually have our first alumni who has started his business. You can see his logo up there, prisonart.store. They're not selling anything yet because we're waiting for the Department of Corrections to allow them to get art out. But that is a big advocacy piece that we're working on. And we're really proud that we have someone actually starting their business in the community. So our challenge is scalability. And I kind of feel like I relate to Isabel on, do we want to scale? Because we have such good outcomes as it is. And I wish we could serve every single facility in the state of Colorado, because there's people who write us and whose parents email us and whose brothers call us so that their sibling or their loved one can get into our program because they've heard such wonderful things about it. And we're not able to serve them because we're only in the 3 facilities. And while Izzy loves her job and the people that we work with, having her drive all around the state of Colorado to all of these rural facilities is really difficult. So we're trying to figure out how we continue the train-the-trainer model, because I actually started out running the class inside the facilities, and I've trained her to do that. So continuing that and finding talent in areas that are closer to the facilities is something that we've thought about doing. And then also continuing to scale the program in the community. So having employment ready right when someone gets out, and figuring out how we can provide more workshops and more training opportunities, and not just throwing information at people, but actually journeying with them on that reentry process.
I'll take the first question again. I'm curious. You said motivation comes from the people believing, but you said that comes kind of middle of the program. Is that right? So I'm curious why you made that choice. And then the second kind of follow-on question is it really the motivation that comes from those people, or is it the continuity that comes from having Izzy, is that her name?
Yeah.
Right, in the program on that weekly basis? Like, and have you done any, going back to kind of the data, to kind of see what's really driving that?
Right. Well, so I think the believing in themselves, they don't have that at the beginning. They see our program as a resource of, oh, I can gather all this information. I think they believe they can learn the information, but they might not believe on like a deeper level that they're worthy of other people's time or effort. And so that starts to come through. And we've done a lot of course, I'm blanking on the word for it, qualitative interviews with program participants throughout the program to identify, we noticed that 98% retention rate. And we started asking them, why are you staying in this program? What is it that keeps you here? You know, you just figured out how to do a balance sheet last week, and that's really hard, and I heard you complaining about that. You know, what kept you in the program? And they always say the volunteers and the mentors and the fact that we're coming back every single week.
So it's a combination of the two, that building on each other.
Yeah.
Is what I'm kind of hearing.
Yeah,
Cool.
definitely.
Questions? Yeah. She's like, where's my microphone?
Thank you. You mentioned the over 600 volunteers that you're able to bring in, and just now the importance of having the consistency with those volunteers. And I know in the nonprofit sector, volunteers can be super useful and really difficult to retain. So can you speak to your strategy in both recruiting and retaining volunteers?
Yeah, recruiting volunteers has just kind of happened. We don't do anything, to be totally, I mean, we do stuff like this. But our volunteers end up loving the experience so much, I'm looking around at a few in the room right now, that they tell their friends, and then they get their friends to come. We do have an easier model. Like, I used to volunteer at Children's Hospital, which I love, and I signed up for a commitment to go every week. And I was at a time and a place in my life when I could do that. But you can come once to a class. You can come once for a 2-hour session, or you could sign up to come every week, or you could come 3 times throughout the 8-month program. So there's a lot of flexibility there, which I think helps us retain volunteers and mentors really, really well. Yeah.
Yeah, here in the middle.
So I've talked to Bob about this, but I previously worked for the California Innocence Project, which works to get wrongly incarcerated people and people where the evidence truly finds that they're innocent out of jail. Yeah. And so I'm really familiar with the fact that people with life sentences don't have any belief and any hope. They're the ones that will act up more in jails and things like that. And I'm just wondering, do you guys have a high percentage of people participating in the program that have a life sentence and don't have a hope and don't see a reason to further an education or see life outside of jail?
I love that you asked the question in that way, because normally we get it from kind of a different side, which is, why would you provide the program to someone with a life sentence? And this is actually one of my favorite things to talk about, because as you said, people with life sentences have less hope, and they have an influence inside the facility. And when they're not influencing people in a positive way, they'll influence people in a negative way. And so they can be like the shot callers who are kind of making bad or dangerous stuff happen in the prisons. And we say that anyone who wants to be in our program can be in our program. So when we actually started at Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility, where you just saw that clip from, when the population heard about that, almost half of the people who signed up were people with life sentences, because they don't have access to other programs, and they're hungry for it, and they're really excited for it. And they have been the driving culture shift within the facilities. So we've heard wardens and correctional officers and majors and lieutenants all say that their rates of violence and gang activity have dropped since our program being there, because the people with life sentences are involved in something good and something positive. And actually, a lot of the people who have graduated from our program have started other new kinds of social impacts. We have one who runs a mental health therapy group, one who does a suicide prevention group, one who organizes a whole group of people that make backpacks for underprivileged kids. So they learn that people still believe about them and care about them, and we arm them with all these tools and skills, and then they end up using their powers for good.
Can we get a microphone back here? Yeah.
So I heard you mention about your concerns about scalability and whether you want to grow or not. I was wondering whether you find the struggle or the reluctance of pursuing a larger scale more on the institutional side, on trying to get that foot in the door in more institutions and more correctional facilities, or is it more held back by Defy Colorado itself, just trying to make sure that what you're doing is done well?
Yeah. We have probably 5 emails sitting in our inbox from different correctional facilities that are asking us to expand. So there's definitely a desire for it from other correctional facilities, and a lot of that is because the wardens talk about it. They talk about those reduced incidences of violence and the culture shift within the facility. And so they start to get the word around that they want this program as well. And like I said, we're still really new, so we're just trying to make sure we have really good processes in place and that we're able to actually duplicate the program other places and do that in a really efficient way.
To build on that a little bit, do the prisons fund in any way?
They don't.
Is there an opportunity for that? Or is that not something you want to, does that put an undue pressure in a weird way?
Right, I mean, right now it's not, right? Like we have very open, candid conversations. It's one of the things we've been working on as an organization is transparency with all of our stakeholders. And so we talk to the Colorado Department of Corrections about funding often, and it's just not something that they have funding for right now. They have a huge budget, but it's because it costs $39,000 to incarcerate one individual.
Questions? I'm going to go back and then we'll come to you and we'll finish it up.
So can you tell us how you got your foot in the door initially? And if you're, I don't know if you said you're nationwide or just local, and where your funding comes from, if you can.
Sure. How we got our foot in the door initially with the Colorado Department of Corrections. Yeah. So initially, we met with one of the wardens of one of the correctional facilities, and they have a lot of programs, and he wasn't so sure that they needed it here in Colorado. And we ended up meeting with the governor's office and the governor's chief legal counsel, who is now on our board of directors, and when it was Governor Hickenlooper. And they really, really loved the program, so they put us into 2 different facilities, Arkansas Valley and Colorado State Penitentiary. And so that was how it initially started, and it very easily could have ended after that first year. But now the wardens, as I mentioned earlier, are our biggest proponents and our biggest cheerleaders. We've had them drive up to Denver and Boulder for events, and they love the program now. It didn't start out that way. So I think the fact that they love it as much as we do now, and we really see them as partners and having a collaborative relationship has showed the effectiveness of the program.
Awesome. Can we get a microphone here? Question similar to what as asked of Isabel. Do you have other groups that you network? Are there other states that are doing this as well, or something similar?
So the curriculum is also run in a couple other states, but we're all localized on a state level. So we're our own 501c3.
Interesting with your program, it's at $39,000 to keep a prisoner in prison. Those dollars, is there a layout of how those dollars are being spent? Because I understand there's GED programs, there's food handling things, so you come out and have some form of hope of trying to transition back into society. So your program sounds a wonderful opportunity to reallocate dollars. Are those discussions happening at any level? Because obviously you're new, but I think you've already seen the impact you're making, and just curious, finding funding within the prisonal system.
Yeah,
to do this.
I think we're hopeful that that can happen, because they definitely do use some of those dollars for education, GED education, things like that. But mostly it's used for like the actual facility itself and for food and like those kinds of basic needs.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
So this is our last presenter. If you haven't been following the structure, they get 8 minutes to present. We do 5 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll jump into a panel discussion where we can go deeper with everybody.
I don't have any slides. I represent an organization called the NYAGI Project. It represents Now You Are the Group's Interest. It is an acronym for that mother or child that lives in remote parts of the world that did not win the womb lottery, has little access to health care, lives off the road, so to speak, not even just on trails or paths. The data suggests from the WHO that every 2 minutes around the world a mother dies. So everybody in this room will be dead by the time midnight strikes. Or, people ask me what I'm doing with this, the equivalent of a fully loaded 747 full of pregnant mothers crashes every day around the world. My unit of time is 2 minutes. That's how I look at my life now. When you think of a mother, what do you think of? And this isn't a psychotherapy session. People usually think universally of mothers as being loving, forgiving, nurturing. If you lose the mother, you lose the center pole of the family tent. You lose community members. And the majority of the women that die in pregnancy or childbirth are those that live in remote areas, low-income areas, etc. So following up with some of the other presentations, we're a small startup, nonprofit startup that is interested in scaling. I built something with no goal in mind, and they are coming. And our mission statement is to save mothers' lives with this. That's an ultrasound machine. It plugs into an iPad, and that is technology today. It's available today. Right now, we can save mothers around the world simply by putting this in our backpack, scooting out to remote areas, scanning the pregnant mothers in the villages who have perhaps no symptoms, just normal pregnancy, but you can identify with this that they will die if they stay in their village, if they don't deliver their baby in a hospital that can take care of them. For example, if they have a placenta previa, low-lying placenta, right over the birth canal, she goes into labor, starts to dilate, she'll bleed out. She'll die, the baby will die, and that's preventable with this. This is like an electronic crystal ball. You can predict that she will die. Now, the challenge is, in the remote areas of the world, sometimes the nearest hospital is from here, from Boulder to Salt Lake City. Imagine you being 9 months pregnant, you're told, listen, you've got to walk to Salt Lake City, 9 months pregnant, but if you don't, you will die. Yeah, it's reality, and it's preventable with this. The nearest clinic may be on top of Long's Peak. That's the best place, that's the nearest they can go. But the challenge is us scaling. So what did we do? A few years ago, I made software for learning ultrasound, because ultrasound is great technology, but if you've ever seen one, it looks like a bad weather map. It's really hard to understand what you're looking at and what you're looking for. To me, it's analogous to learning how to fly an Italian helicopter at the bottom of the ocean in the dark with a credit card thick flashlight looking through murky water. All right? And so it's challenging. What I did was I made software for learning orthopedic ultrasound, because I'm a non-surgical orthopedic physician and I'm saving mothers' lives in remote areas of the world. I can tell you the story another time when I've got more time. But the bottom line is that in Africa and in Asia, remote villages, tennis elbow is not a top priority. So what I did is I took the software and I made a women's health module. I made a software that works on iPads in airplane mode, offline, that works like a teacher in a box. So what our model is, we'll go in with some very skilled expert sonographers, to date volunteers. We train the trainers. We work with partners in country that have access to the healthcare system, Minister of Health, etc. And we teach basic ultrasound skills in a week, and then we leave them the iPads that they can continue to learn, because they're smart people and they can independently study, they can learn on the job. This is kind of like a GPS that sits on your dashboard when you're driving. And so as you're scanning, when you need information, you can quickly access it with the software. So the model is to go in and do a very intensive, hands-on scan training. Learn to ride a bicycle by riding a bicycle, not by watching a PowerPoint on how to ride a bicycle. We get them to scan, put the probe in their hand, and we just, over the course of 5 days, we do a lot of teaching and confidence building. By the time we leave, they are ready to go. So, and then when we come back, we leave the iPads, we stay in touch with them, and we continue to answer questions and monitor, and we use technology through webinars and online resources, etc., to continue their learning, with the goal of them becoming empowered to become teachers themselves. So what we've done is we've been to Nepal twice. The first time was the pilot test. We went with a small group of about 7 people. The partner organization didn't know what to expect of us. We came back and they said, you hit it out of the park. We didn't believe you could teach basic ultrasound in 5 days, and you did. So you get an A++. She said that you get a D- for teaching us how to use an iPad. And so we didn't even think about that. And the second trip, we brought some high school and college students with us, and they taught the tech stuff. They had a nice essay for college and medical school, and they had a purpose on this mission. Our mission statement is saving lives with ultrasound, ... together, ... today. We did such a good job in Nepal that we got kicked out. The Minister of Health got mad at us because they had a 3-month program and we did it in 5 days. And they were like, well, who are these people? And prove that your program works, etc. And I have a day job. We don't have time for that. I'm not going to sit there and do a full study comparing, etc. So we had to kind of back off from Nepal a little bit. And we got an opportunity to go to Haiti this year, and we are now planning to penetrate Haiti with ultrasound in the entire country. Bringing out the ultrasound, these portable ultrasound machines into the rural areas of Haiti that can do basic screening in the villages that can then triage the patients higher up into the healthcare system as appropriate. So we're not wasting the university medical center hospitals doing normal ultrasound scans. They're basically picking those that need the help as they go up the chain. So the efficiency of the healthcare system should improve. And this is not just for babies. You can diagnose fractures. You can diagnose bleeding in the belly. You can diagnose bleeding in the brain. It's like a portable radiology department, if you know how to use it. We focus on prenatal healthcare, prenatal scanning, but once they get confident, they can look at pneumonias in children without x-ray. So it's an incredibly powerful technology, which is not used that much because it's hard to learn. What we do is accelerate that learning process. 1 minute. So the success story, right, the data from Nepal is that we've got, there are about 10 mothers a month that are referred out of the mountains to the medical centers, to the hospitals, based on the ultrasound scans. We are working in Haiti now to try to develop a data collection system to see how that's affecting their country. And the challenges are basically people, places, and things. So the people is we need connections. We need partners. We need partners that have connections in the countries that we work in. We empower that country with their own education system, an ultrasound school in a sense, and let them train the trainers and teach others and let it scale within the country. We've been invited to Uganda, Peru, Kenya, Guatemala, Bolivia, and we don't have the capacity for it right now, but that's the biggest thing is people and connections. Things we need, places. The places that we pick have to be safe. We almost didn't get out of Haiti last time. 2 days after we left, the whole country imploded, and you had to hire a helicopter to get you from your hotel to the airport to fly out. And so we're looking for stable countries. And then the things, trying to incorporate technology into a low-income, developing world economy is challenging, but it's doable. We've done it, and we're doing it. So that's the biggest challenge, of course, is, like any nonprofit, is financing. I basically, and some people who have attracted to me basically funded this. We are all volunteers to date. We are the earliest startup at this organization, I believe. But I think we have tremendous potential. I'll leave it at that.
What is this?
That is because...
No, I was teasing.
But let me explain this. We accelerate learning because I hope you won't forget that. 95% of what you hear tonight will be gone by tomorrow morning. That's our sieve brains. You don't remember things very well unless it makes an impact. I was hoping to make an impact on the crashing 747s every day. Thanks.
Got it. I was just commenting, what's that yellow thing in your hand?
Oh,
I
yeah,
got the
yeah.
other one.
As far as the phone book, yeah.
So my first question is, why this problem?
Why this?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm interested in international health, and
Background? Is it what you
I'm
do
a
as a J job?
physician. I am just trying to help people, and if you follow the lily pads, you follow the stepping stones. I started learning ultrasound about 20 years ago, and love it. It's just underutilized, and I'm a teacher at heart, and then it just pivoted as we went. Yeah.
And then, so I'll let you go. And then kind of a follow-on question. What else do the people need to know besides how to use the ultrasound when they're in the field? Like, what are the skills that you're teaching them over the 5 days besides how to read the ultrasound?
How to reboot an iPad.
Okay.
We communicate with WhatsApp and Facebook.
Okay.
We also do remote teaching with Zoom and GoToWebinar. And it's really, the concept is that you don't have to be an expert to use this. You could teach anybody this in a day, how to use this. I could teach you in an hour how to use the basics, and it's totally safe. This is just sound wave. There's no radiation to it. And so the idea that once you get comfortable on a bicycle, then you can start jumping over the curb and you start going to the train park, and all of a sudden you're in the X game and you're doing the flip things. But it's all about chunking your confidence together and getting them started. So the concept of NYAGI is just get them confident enough to use it, and then they can start exploring. Yeah,
awesome.
That's it.
Questions? Otherwise, I'll keep going. Yeah.
This is $2,000. Yeah. iPad is about $500 if you get the cheap version. Right? You don't need the cellular version. And then the cost per student trained, I don't even know, because we've all been volunteers and we've all self-funded. Most of the volunteers have been a GoFundMe campaign, and so we are now in the process, because this has been a kind of a basement or a garage operation up to date. Because this has to do with mothers, and I think everybody in this room has or had a mother, it sells itself, and it's the concept of what the mother represents to society, and that's it. So naturally attracts people to help, and it's kind of it just seems to fit. So people have volunteered their time very graciously. Experts have come to me. I've mentioned this in my clinic, and they say, hey, I want to play with you. What can I do? And so I said, what can you do? What's your expertise? And I have people that are working with me now to create a foundation we have a board of directors, a board of advisors, we've got an honorary board. We are creating a real organization at this point. And we are ready to kind of launch, take this little hang glider and turn it into a 747 with the right connections and the right funding, et cetera. And it's scalable because we're basically empowering the local countries to teach themselves. And then it's just a matter of getting the technology out there. The other thing I didn't mention, which is kind of the coolest part of this whole project, is iPad saving lives. We take old iPads, iPad 2s that we throw away in this country, and we repurpose them. We scrape them clean, we load up the software, and we leave it in the countries that we're in. I presented at the Pre-Med Society here, at the Pre-Med Club at CU, and I had students spontaneously come up to me and say, hey, I want to help. So I said, well, okay, well, maybe you can help find iPads. I have a high school student. I won't mention Brad's daughter's name, but But she came up to me spontaneously after I was telling her about this project, and she went home to her mother and said, "Hey, Mom, I want your old iPad." I said, "What for?" She goes, "I want to go save lives in Africa. I want to save mothers' lives in Africa." And she said, "Okay." She gave me the first iPad, which is now in Uganda. And the cool thing about the iPads, with repurposing the iPads, is that you can geo-track these things with Find My iPhone. So we can see where they are around the world, and we can tell you what village your iPad is in, how many lives it saved, and we can create strings of connection between the kind of the first world, the developed world, and the developing world, the low-income world. So we have this database of iPads all around the world, and we can create more and more. And it's pretty heartwarming to think your iPad that was sitting in a drawer somewhere is now saving, just saved 10 mothers' lives last year. And the ripple effects of no orphans, etc., is profound.
Let's get to a couple of questions,
Yeah.
too. I'm going to go in the back here first. Yeah, the red shirt.
We're able to expand from there, but I'm curious, when you first go into communities, when you first go into new countries, how are you determining
We actually require working with partners that are in country, already established. So we've been approached by many different organizations. That's why we're getting called all the time, say, "Hey, we heard about your thing. Can you come and get us ultrasound in our clinic, etc." What we've distilled it down to is working with countries that have the approval from the government, have the connections to the medical system that can scale it. So an individual little clinic in this little town, that might be great. They can probably piggyback on top of a bigger organization. But for example, in Haiti, the organization, our partner organization, is administering a $100 million USAID grant for the country of Haiti. It's the largest medical, it's the biggest funder of the Haitian medical system, more than the Minister of Health. They have connections to 160 clinics in the entire country. So they're the ones that are buying the ultrasound machines. We are an education company. We go and we teach. And we ask that the partner organization actually purchase these things so that they're held responsible for them. But we will teach them how to fly the helicopter, and we do it with experts and efficiently, and we empower them so that we don't just scan people. We actually teach how to scan people. Yeah, teach them how to fish.
Yeah, let's go over here. Second question.
Thank you. My name is Julia. I'm a Brazilian lawyer, and I'd like to ask if there is anything already happening in Brazil, any partnership, and if not, how can we establish a partnership in Brazil? Because we do have a public system, a national public system. The problem, as being the 5th biggest country in the world and being a very unequal country with very isolated populations, it misses programs like that, especially when it comes to the tribes and rural areas. So
yeah, this is exactly what I'm talking about. There's a need, and that's what we're trying to fill. One of the requirements we have is that the place we go to has to be safe, but also that there's no barrier to getting care if the people diagnose something. For example, when we went to Haiti last time, we had an echocardiographer with us, diagnosed a young girl, 10 years old, with a bad heart valve. There's no cardiothoracic surgeons in the entire country, and there's nothing we could do with that. There are things we can do with placenta previa or breech babies, etc. We can get them to the appropriate facility, as long as there's no financial barrier. Some countries requires you to pay in order to get into the hospital. The people that as you know, that live in the rural areas, they may not have that. But so if the health system is such that it allows to take care of the poorer people without a lot of barriers, then we're all in. Once we get, once we get done with Haiti, right now we have a little bit of limited bandwidth because this is an all-volunteer organization.
We have time for one more question. Let's come over here.
In terms of scaling, it seems like your operation, as is right now, has huge potential to be adopted into a larger organization, such as the WHO or the USAID. How willing are you to scale in that way? and make this formally part of a larger program?
Totally. I'll give it up if they can take it across the world. If we can save this every day, I'm in. All right, did it sink in? If we can do that, have at it. If you have connections, please talk to me.
That was awesome. Thank you. Can I get everybody who's coming up to come up front? I wonder. That's what that is. That's right.
Oh.
Can I just start off by saying, hey, thank you so much for doing this, for doing what you do. It's amazing. Can we get a big just clap?
Yeah, so let's do about 10 minutes of questions. Robert and I are happy to ask, but please jump in, make this as interactive as we can. And then I want to remind everyone that we've got a reception next door. One of the consistent themes in terms of the challenge of scaling that I heard is quality control, and many of you mentioned the phrase train the trainers. In fact, I think everybody had some version of that. Frank, maybe I'd like to start with you in terms of the relationship between the nurse and the individual. That has to be the secret sauce to what makes the intervention effective or not. How have you guys found quality control to be as you bring more nurses into the organization? Can you give us some sense about what works? And I'd welcome others' thoughts about some of the challenges and successes associated with that.
Yeah, obviously it's extremely challenging, right? Because you have a much larger network. People are trying to make adjustments for their local challenges that they're having, and then they tend to deviate. I think when you say train the trainer, one of the functions we also provide is a nurse consultation. So what we do is we focus on the nurse supervisor and making sure that they're trained appropriately to ensure that the program is implemented with the highest level of fidelity to get the outcomes, right? So they're working with the nurses on a regular basis, dealing with the challenges that they have every day, making sure that the program stays on track.
Other experiences with that?
One thing I didn't mention is that we hire, 65% of our staff have lived experience with the issues that we work around, addiction, homelessness, and incarceration. So, one of the things that we really draw upon is people's lived experience as part of setting the culture in what we do. I think we have challenges because depending on whether you're working in one of our social enterprises, it's a different skill set that needs to be trained than if you're a case manager. So we kind of have two tiers of training, training across kind of what the culture of the organization is, what the program goal is, but then within each place or each component, we have to do specific training. But if you don't have the big picture, it's impossible to get to the nitty-gritty. So I think, as we look to scale, we're building leaders within our own organization to then take it and seed it elsewhere.
Yeah, what we've done is we've distilled it down to finding kind of a champion, internal champion for our countries that are going to lead the education program, so to speak. They then, and we also teach the other physicians or other healthcare providers the basic ultrasound. We give them the carrot of getting them a certification if they pass the test. And we're talking with an independent testing organization that actually certifies the sonographers in this country, and they're making a special test just for NYAGI to get them to a level of proficiency that proves that they know what they're doing, and then they can become teachers themselves. So you don't have the slippery slope of game of telephone and the message comes out wrong at the end. We're trying to maintain that the quality of the scanning so that it scales and it maintains the educational value. That's it.
That strikes me as a super interesting idea, the certification idea. Is it literally in the software that you're
No, it's actually, right now we're working with a totally independent organization that does testing. And if you've ever been in the developing world, they all love certificates. Just going to a conference like this, if they got a little piece of paper, they're going to frame it and put it on their wall.
We'll get you one later.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. I've got the invitation for dinner, so I can. But they value. There's no continuing education after they finish medical school in a lot of these countries. So once they're done with school, that's it. So the idea of giving them a new skill set, especially a tool like the ultrasound, and they've met the criteria based on this. It's called ARDMS. This organization that actually certifies our sonographers in this country, not to the depth that they do. We don't count fingers and toes on the babies. There's not much you can do about that. But being able to identify placenta previa or multiples and things like that, fractures, pneumonias, those basic life-saving conditions, they should be able to do. So we start with the baby training, and then we expand it to looking for pneumonias in kids and bleeding in the belly and everything else, like ectopic pregnancies. Yeah.
Well, I mean, ours is interesting because not only are we training, for example, our program managers to be able to scale, to carry out what the culture is, we also are training the graduates from the program, because we didn't mention we run a peer facilitated model, and that's one of the overall keys to being able to deliver this in the long term. And so anybody who graduates from the first cohort or a prior cohort applies to become a peer facilitator to teach the classes, say with Izzy, for future. And that is so critical, because that idea of creating that culture in prison, when we started this program, we said we're going to build it for the long term. And you heard Stacy highlight why we took in a higher percentage of lifers. Well, I don't know how many people have walked into prisons, but they're one of the most static environments you would ever see in your life. And the schoolyard, everything you can imagine that goes on there, what we're trying to do is to continue to build into the prison population to bring the right participants into it. And so the training doesn't just happen from a programming standpoint, it happens with the peer facilitators, the other stakeholders who are inside the prison. And it's those ideas, we distill things down. Everybody talked about culture, and our program starts and ends with culture at the end of the day. I'm looking around, we have a couple of volunteers in the room who've come down to prison with us, and this will be near and dear to their heart. We preach three basic things, right? One is partner, not pity. Pity's the cheapest thing you can get inside prison, right? Poor you, how did this happen to you? I can't believe this happened to you. Hand up, not a handout, which is obvious. And then the biggest one is brutal honesty with extreme kindness. When people come into prison, such as everybody in the community, Brad and your folks have been into prison before during those mentoring sessions, we look at it and say that's the most valuable time we're ever going to have together, is that 2 or 3 hours during that day. And if you're not willing to deliver real life advice, real life feedback, then at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to move that train forward.
I'm curious how innovation and technology, like I love the fact that you guys thought of innovation from a process standpoint. It sounds like you guys have rolled out a little bit of technology. I'm hearing yours and I'm thinking machine learning, right? Like I could think of creating a handful of machine learning algorithms that could probably identify a handful of the patterns that you've already discussed, and there is no human that involved, right? Other than doing the scanning and interacting. In your case, I'm thinking technology of, can I have multiple prisons all streaming into one prison? Mm-hmm. At some of that, you also lose the human touch, though, right? You bring the technology in. So I'm curious how that technology innovation plays against the human, and is that a positive or a negative in the way you think about how you might grow or evolve? Anybody who wants that or not?
I can talk from my perspective. You can't replace the human touch in healthcare. The problem we have with babies is that they move, so it's difficult to keep AI figuring out where the baby's head is.
Well, the scanning still has to happen.
Yeah,
but the identification part, right?
Yeah.
So you're training somebody how to work the sensor over the belly, which I'm assuming is significantly easier than training somebody how to read the scan.
Right. Yeah, but the concept is that every person, every situation is different for us. So yeah, it is a requirement to have the human touch. Like if you were a mother and you were told, listen, if a computer said you will die if you stay in the village, that's not the same as listen. you've had a normal baby delivery before, this one's going to kill you. And every culture that message has to be delivered differently. And so there's definitely a human element that you probably cannot replace with what I'm doing.
I don't know whether it's technology or just, using data more effectively, but I think for us, we've really, we're obviously a big proponent of not having a one-size-fits-all solution to one of the most complex problems that's facing our country right now. So I think one of the things, we really feel strongly about is really good data around who's experiencing homelessness and then matching resources to that data. We take it a step further because we use a Salesforce database where we track, we do an intake, like 55 questions on someone, then we track them during the program, and then we measure our outcomes. So now we have, basically a data set where we can look at the positive outcomes and then look at the indicators when they came into the program and then try to, proactively bring in those people. Sounds like we're like creaming, but actually we're looking for, female meth users. Like we're actually looking for different parts of the population that are going to have the highest, rates of success so that we can use our scarce resource. And then totally kind of differently, but also trying to use mainstream technology to keep people connected. I mean, the hardest thing to do is to continue to follow up and to provide, you can't, I'm sure the Defy folks see this, it's like, when someone graduates the program, you want them to integrate back in the community, but you also want to follow up with them. So we're using our fundraising software that's like a text to give to actually text to communicate, because people use text more than they use email. And, we're trying to, I mentioned social media. I mean, we're using Facebook groups as opposed to phone calls because that's how you can stay connected with people. So it would be great to sort of have our own app, but we're also trying to, we don't have that, but being nimble and using mainstream tools, just recognizing that's how I'm communicating with my college friends. So why shouldn't it be the same way?
I love the way you storytell. Thank you for that.
You don't want me to get started on technology, do you?
Share,
so,
please.
all right. So, yeah, technology is very much integrated into what we do, being an evidence-based organization, right? I mean, data collection, we provide a solution. We aggregate data from 9 different data collection systems from around the country. We're like one of the only programs that actually does that in our space. And then we can take that data, we give it to our research team, they go through, they look for patterns, and actually we're moving towards predictive analytics to say, family has these characteristics, we're seeing these behaviors, we can expect they're gonna leave the program, and then we can do some kind of intervention. We just started doing telehealth as well from a nutrition perspective or retention perspective. If we have a mom that's been canceling and she's hard to get to, hey, can you do an appointment through telehealth in some way? So technology is a big piece for us.
From a funding standpoint, has that always been part of the ethos of the company? Or since you've added that, has funding gotten easier?
I think it's always been there, which is an important piece of it. We do find funding to improve upon it, right? So we've done a lot of upgrades and that type of thing, so we can have like an innovation platform where we can really integrate a lot of the different things we have going on.
Let's open up for 2 questions, and then we'll move to the reception. Go ahead. Good hustle, Wilson.
Awesome, thank you. I have a question about accountability. So I've spent most of my career in the nonprofit space, but also on the for-profit side as well. And when I think about for-profits and their market, for-profits have a paying market. Right, so you know that the product is working because people choose to pay for it. They have options. In the nonprofit space, often communities don't have options. They're not paying for it. Your actual paying market are your funders. And so how do you, as a nonprofit organization, make sure that you're actually serving your customers, the people who are receiving your products, not paying for them? How do you ensure that accountability? And I'm especially interested in knowing how you incorporate their sort of perspectives and feedback on your staff, on your leadership teams, and also on your governing boards.
I mean, I'll jump in. It's a great question. It is a great question. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I'm going to keep mine short. we have numerous stakeholders in this organization, right? First and foremost is the Department of Correction, the prisons, the wardens, everybody that works there. We have the community, we have the program participants, and then we have the staff, the board, et cetera, that's there. Our accountability comes through constant feedback. For example, in prison, you know very quickly whether you're being accountable or not accountable based on your interaction with the wardens and based on your interaction with the Department of Corrections staff. They are very quick because if you think about it, you know, the most valuable commodity that we fight for in prisons, I mean, what do you think it is? It's not, you know, it's not the men who want to come into the program. It's not, you know, the most important thing that we fight for is the space. Everything's space limited inside prisons, and we're not short on resources or other programs that are in there. And so that accountability piece is very straightforward. They let us know. It's very direct. If it's not working, they're not getting, you know, what they think the return is on that non-monetary investment, as you mentioned. It happens. I think beyond that, we're still trying to figure out the rest of that accountability. You know, I think we're still trying to figure out what is the accountability to the community. You know, how do we know that we're serving it in the most efficient and the most impactful type way?
And if I can tag a little bit onto it, for the entrepreneurs in training, that's what we call the incarcerated individuals in our program. They do satisfaction surveys 4 times throughout the curriculum, so we can measure their satisfaction as they go through the program. And then we also do those qualitative data collection sessions where they tell us their feedback, and that's what's accounted for actually a lot of the program changes on the ground in the prisons.
So it's all metrics. We measure everything. We report out quarterly to our funders, and then on the ground, we're providing metrics to them. You know, how many families are they serving? What are the outcomes they're getting? And we report out on that on a monthly basis, actually. So there's complete accountability, and what's most important in accountability is transparency. You have to be completely open and honest about here's what's going on, here's what our challenges are, and here's what we do really well.
Yeah, I would agree with that in terms of how we report out to our funders and our stakeholders. I would say with our actual participants, who we call trainees, the accountability comes not, you know, because we actually really trust them. So we're giving you a job, we've known you for a couple days, you're transitioning out of homelessness, and hey, go put on our uniform and go clean on the creek path. And people, I mean, you can imagine the risk there, no one laughed, but that's like a big risk every day that we take, but we believe in people and we are trusting them, and they in turn rise to the occasion. I mean, we've had a handful of issues, but you know, considering what could happen, I think people feel really accountable to the opportunity, and you know, that's really valuable.
Take one more question. Yeah.
So I'd like to add to that, to your point around accountability. I'm surprised that you wouldn't have said that your major stakeholder is the person who you're serving, and the reason I say that is that I work with nonprofits right now, mostly people of color, run by people of color, boards people of color, who are saying that they have to get this done themselves and they have to get the community around them. And I haven't heard a lot about community. I've heard about what you do for people, which is okay. I mean, I think that's important. Nonprofits are known for service, for providing service. I'm just not sure if is it about the charity or is it about the change you want? And I did hear some wonderful ideas around, you know, how you engage people. But I think that what I'm seeing in innovation in communities across the country is a very different issue around accountability. Because, again, the ones that are most impacted need to be in the center of this work. And so I totally honor everything that you've all said. I just feel like there's a point where the communities that are most affected need to be in your boardrooms and need to be on your CFOs or your COOs or your CEOs. I feel like there's a whole misstep around, and technology for me, by the way, the other issue around people of color, organizations, they use technology because technology is cheap, like Twitter, right? Or not, sorry, not Twitter. Looking at Facebook, that's how they organize, right? Poor community is probably the most heavily, networked group ever, because they have to be, because they don't have any other option. So I'm just wondering where the nonprofit sector around innovation looks. For sure at metrics, we need that. A good organizer always has great metrics. They know what they're doing. So I again do not want to be a Debbie Downer here. I just think that there's another way of looking at innovation in communities that are suffering, as you all are working on, especially, well, I mean, it's all of you. If you think about the issues, they're huge. And I think I'd like any thoughts, and please talk back, because I want to hear if I'm missing something.
Sure. Oh, somebody else want to go? So I don't think you're being a Debbie Downer. I'm trying to understand the question. So the question is, how do we reach the families that are really in need and understand what it is they want, and are they receiving services that are helping them? Do they perceive it as helpful?
So as I understand it, maybe I'll take a swing at it. I think the point is the individuals served that benefit from the services, how do they come back as key members of the community and leaders in the organization? I think that there was fragments of that in the conversation, but you're highlighting that needs to be a critical component in your experience. Is that correct?
That they take on leadership in their community.
Absolutely.
The community we're trying to help change, right? So,
Gotcha.
that's exactly
We have community advisory boards in every program that we implement. We have an advocacy team that has moms from that program on it. We have an alumni program that informs us. They're advocates on the ground for us. Our outreach workers are more often than not, in fact, I think all of them are. They're actually previous moms, so they know where to go, which bridge to go under, how to find the mom. We have a dedicated internal individual we call our feedback manager. She's really a data scientist. That's really what she should be called. And we survey our moms. We got 60,000 families every year that we survey, get all that feedback, and we do a deep dive analysis on that data. We do a net promoter score. Hey, would you recommend us to a friend? Just as a high-level metric, but then we dig deep into the data and figure out what changes we need. And we also work with the communities as well that they do that type of evaluation as well. So it's a great point that you bring up. That was not an area that we focused on in this conversation, though. You're right. I don't know if somebody else wanted to.
Other thoughts about?
I mean, I agree with it 100%. I mean, from our standpoint, it's a lot messier. We don't have dedicated advocates or whatever. For example, we have one of our graduates who works for us part-time. He helps us on the post-release program from an ideation standpoint. We have another graduate who, works with us in terms of helping out on different things that are there. I'm just being completely blunt with you because I think reading between the lines, you make a very good point. The men and women inside prison don't need to hear from a middle-aged, slightly overweight white guy like myself how we're going to solve this issue of recidivism, right? And that idea of putting it back into our communities, it's something we do strive towards in terms of doing it, but we don't have any great solutions. It's kind of a game of numbers at the end of the day.
I don't want to repeat myself because I talked a little bit about, how a large proportion of our staff have experienced life experiences. But I do want to just bring up one quick thing because you brought up, different communities and different demographics. And so we replicated a program, our Boulder-based program. The demographics of people experiencing homelessness are highly reflective of the Boulder demographic. Majority, of the adults experiencing homelessness, single adults, are white. 7% are African American, and very few Latinos because it's a different culture. We replicate in Aurora. It's the complete opposite. About 80% of folks in our program are African American, and it's a completely different demographic. Yet the program design is working in a very, very similar way. But around the fringes of it, there's some very different cultural components of Aurora than our Boulder program. But the key, I think, is we've been able to reflect those in the parts of the program that are negotiable, and then continue to have a program design that's very focused on our key principles of work, support, and housing, and the community around that. But I think it's a really cool test case because all of a sudden our Boulder-based organization, our staff demographics have completely changed. And that's been a really great learning opportunity for everyone at every level of the organization.
So I'm going to say some thank yous. I'm going to ask you to hold your applause. First of all, I want to acknowledge the Silicon Flatiron staff that helps make this happen. Heather, Vanessa, Kelly, Amy, our new executive director, as well as our student volunteers, Kelsey and Wilson. Additionally, it's been such a treat to have Robert back, and you did such a terrific job with this tonight. Man, I'm really honored, humbled, and inspired to be here. I mean, the work that each of your organizations is doing, I'm just so grateful for you guys taking time tonight to highlight it and talk about some of the challenges associated with creating bigger impact. Please help me give a warm thank you to Frank.